Picture this. It's the middle of the night, deep inside a World War II prison camp. Through all the silence and static, there's a faint signal, a whisper. But that's not just a radio broadcast. No, that's the sound of hope, engineered from literally nothing.
I mean, take a look at this thing. It might look pretty rough, but what you're seeing here is one of the most incredible acts of resistance you can imagine. This is a secret radio, built by prisoners of war, and its hiding spot? Right inside a hollowed-out log. This little device wasn't a toy. It was their lifeline.
You see, when you're a prisoner of war, the enemy isn't just the guards watching you from the towers. It's the boredom, that crushing, endless, soul-destroying monotony. Fred Hill, a POW himself, knew it well. The waiting, the silence, the feeling that the world had forgotten you, that was a prison all on its own.
So, to fight back against that despair, they started their own secret war. In whispers, in the shadows, they began collecting the most unbelievable things. A piece of barbed wire, snipped right from the fence, a slat from a bed, grease from a burning candle. Every single piece was a tiny act of rebellion, and they were risking their lives to build something that could get them killed, a connection to the world they'd left behind.
So, how in the world could they build a working radio out of junk? Well, the answer isn't just pure ingenuity. It's also based on this piece of almost forgotten science that honestly feels a little bit like magic. They were building something called a crystal radio.
And here's the part that is just mind-blowing. A crystal radio doesn't need batteries. It doesn't need to be plugged in. It has no power source at all. It literally pulls all the energy it needs right out of the air, powered only by the invisible radio waves floating all around us. For a bunch of guys in a PO camp with no electricity, this wasn't just a cool idea, it was the only way it could possibly work.
The whole concept is actually pretty simple. It breaks down into just 4 basic steps. First, you need an antenna to just grab the radio waves from the air. Then, a tuner filters out all the other stations so you can focus on just one. Next, the detector, and this is the real heart of the machine, pulls the audio out. And finally, an earphone turns that electric signal into sound you can actually hear. So this diagram here kind of shows us the path that signal takes. It comes in through the antenna and flows into the tuning circuit. Now, this circuit is designed to vibrate or resonate at one very specific frequency, the frequency of the BBC, for example. And it just ignores everything else. It's a really elegant, totally power-free way to find one single voice in all that noise. But the most important part, the absolute heart of the radio, is the detector. The easiest way to think about it is like a one-way street for electricity. It lets the current flow in, but it can't flow back out. And that simple action is what cleverly separates the sound, the actual voice or music, from the silent radio wave that was carrying it. And that is where the crystal in crystal radio gets its name.
Okay, so now that we get the science, we can go back to the camp and really, truly appreciate the level of genius we're talking about here. These guys didn't have a workshop, they didn't have an electronics store down the street. All they had was a crowded barracks and whatever scraps they could get their hands on.
This is just incredible. For an antenna, they used stolen barbed wire. For that all-important crystal detector, a rusty razor blade, carefully touched with the lead from a pencil. Yeah, the graphite and the oxidized metal created that perfect one-way electrical gate. They even made their own soldering irons from a hot wire and candle grease to stick everything together. And this was the final result, a fully working radio receiver created out of pure desperation and brilliance. It was small enough to just disappear inside a piece of firewood, waiting for the cover of darkness to bring news, music, and a little bit of hope from a world they thought they had completely lost.
But why? Why risk everything, execution, solitary confinement, for this little contraption? Because what came through that secret earphone, it was so much more than just a signal. It was a lifeline. Think about it. Every crackle of a BBC News broadcast, every single note of a song they hadn't heard in years, was a victory. It was proof that they weren't alone, that they hadn't been forgotten. It was a way of fighting back, of reclaiming a piece of who you are in a place designed to strip it all away. So these little radios, they were doing 4 huge things at once. 1, they were intelligence-gathering tools, giving them real news to fight the enemy's propaganda. 2, they were a massive boost to morale. 3, they were a profound act of mental resistance. And maybe most important of all, the project itself gave these men a purpose.
Just like POW Alan Barrett said so simply, the work itself was a kind of salvation. In a world where you're forced to do nothing, having a secret, vital project, something that took focus and skill and courage, that was the key to surviving mentally. It kept that despair from taking over.
You know, it really makes you think. These men risked death just to capture a single, faint signal from the air. Today, we're just flooded with a billion signals every second from our phones, our TVs, or computers. But when you hear a story like this, you just have to ask yourself, in our world of constant noise, what does it really mean to find a signal that actually matters?